Hi everybody, thanks for having me. I'll just start by, I did in the end actually pull together a couple of slides on the exercise that we had. So if I can I'll just be able to share my screen, right?
Yeah.
Great. Um, okay, brilliant. Fantastic. Yes, my name's Callum Campbell. I'm a civil contingencies officer with London Borough Tower Hamlets. I specialise in our sort of community care plan, which is our humanitarian response, which largely relates to, what Tower Hamlets does when there are displacement scenarios. So how do we support our residents when they're out of their homes? And then also I've got sort of kind of liaising and kind of having links with the community sector, voluntary sector, and the faith sector as well come under sort of my reach at Tower Hamlets. On the 9th of November of this year, we ran a live emergency centre exercise. The idea behind this was that we wanted to get all of our emergency centre staff, together and wanted to, reach out to other members of the local authority and invite them to participate, and also sort of members from our sort of voluntary sector friends and faith leaders and such to come and join us in this exercise to get an insight of what preparations Tower Hamlets has for when emergencies occur in our borough. Started off by really kind of tying down, what did we want to get out of this exercise, and we said that we wanted to particularly look at how inclusive and how accessible our response was. So what that kind of meant was we had lots of volunteers who are pretending to be displaced Tower Hamlets residents, and I sort of made sure that there are lots of people who had requirements for additional support needs, be they sort of like mobility issues, cultural needs, some of them even like dietary requirements, all these sorts of things. So a very really kind of emphasizing that sort of that inclusivity of our sort of response. We had a really fantastic turnout. We had 51 attendees in the exercise, which is a pretty much even split between sort of Tower Hamlets staff and kind of external organisations, voluntary sector and also private sector organisations who came along and volunteered sort of on the day. So huge thank you. A lot of the organisations will be in the room today. So huge thank you for everyone to coming along to our exercise. So the exercise ran for about 2 hours. We found that we had, it was these live emergency centre exercises are always sort of quite chaotic. I always find, and I suppose the idea of having these exercises is that I hope that they will become a little less chaotic. So we're kind of really testing our emergency centre managers, testing our emergency centre officers, and also the collaboration, the work that we're doing with our voluntary sector partners and kind of others who are in the room. And so we can see here, this is a kind of a photograph of around our reception area, so where people would enter into the emergency centre to kind of leave some first details. So we and our voluntary sector kind of partners would take some immediate needs and then perhaps signpost them or kind of provide them some more support as they arrive into this emergency centre. And we also have examples of, this is a photograph of one of the briefings that happened just before the emergency centre went live, so just before our attendees turned up. So again, it was quite a sort of, it's quite a detailed exercise in terms of what it kind of put our emergency managers through, because they had the opportunity to set up an emergency centre, to brief their teams, to hand over to the next emergency centre manager, and then kind of all of that managing the additional support needs requirements in the room as the kind of the exercise went on. So like I say, the debrief is still kind of ongoing at the moment, and I was just kind of pondering what would be the most useful sort of key findings to feed back to the room, sort of as per this audience. I thought I'd sort of steer away from the Tower Hamlets isms and steer more towards sort of general sort of like findings that I just think would apply for like probably all emergency centres, I dare say, and then also for partners who perhaps aren't part of a local authority, but perhaps you don't have partnerships with local authorities, perhaps have volunteers who volunteer in this space, or are looking to gain more experience in this space. So one of the first key findings that I kind of found out, and it's a little bit of a misnomer really, is that the exercise was so helpful for not only sort of ourselves as Tower Hamlets, but also for the partners who we usually deploy with. I'm thinking of of friends in British Red Cross, in Islamic Relief, in First Aid Nursing Yeomanry, because it really gave us an opportunity to actually deploy together and to just trial out, well, how do we really work together in real life, and then how do our roles kind of really complement each other? How does information flow between us? And it really was invaluable for us to give certainly our staff that kind of that controlled area, that controlled space to exercise their roles in this space really. Another really key finding so far has been that the information flow, like I would quite often kind of speak of the information flow in an emergency centre being the sort of the kind of the key factor that kind of, sort of wins or loses the mood of an emergency centre. You really need to make sure that you're you you need to be mindful of these emergency centres. For those of us who have a local offer in a particular borough, these emergency centres are not too numerous. They're roughly one a year. That's probably a bit of sort of kind of pluck that number out of thin air, really. But that means that our emergency centre officers, and also particularly the attendees and anyone who doesn't work in this space daily, will quite often need a sort of a refresh on what it is that they are perhaps going to be doing, and probably a little bit of hand holding at the start. So lots of briefings from the emergency centre manager to their team, getting to know who is in their staff team, also getting to know who from our voluntary sector partners is here, and just making sure that we all understand where our strengths lie, so that if someone presents and says they need this type of practical support, we know that, we can signpost them, or we can take them over to someone from this organisation, or that's something that us in the council can handle sort of really well. Information flow. Another really important point, and it's something that's mentioned in the British Red Cross Emergency Centre training, is the use of sort of update boards and having a time on a whiteboard for people to to look at and be mindful of when the next information update is coming. We find that if we don't fill an information vacuum, people fill it themselves with things like rumours and things they've heard from, and speculation, things they've heard from people. So it's really important to kind of get ahead of that sort of information curve and sort of fill that with your information. We also found, I know this is quite a regular find to get out of these exercises, that louder residents were receiving the most attention when they weren't necessarily those who needed the most attention. So still haven't got a very good way of sort of combating that, but I think that's something that's it's worth paying attention or drawing attention to in this space. And one of the last sort of points that I will pick out here is that kind of use of, this is originally my first point, and it really didn't actually sit right with me that was my first point. But the need to have security, or some, we in Tower Hamlets would use perhaps environment or enforcement officers to deal with antisocial behaviour that we can't manage or deal with by approaching it with kind of compassion and understanding. So there really is, we found a need for there to be either security or some way of, if people are asked to leave a centre for, because they're being disruptive, then there needs to be a way of sort of kind of keeping them out, or ensuring that they are staying out, or kind of really sort of enforcing some of those rules. As you can imagine, this was, a live exercise. So there were some people who are really kind of leaning into their roles, which is fantastic to see. But it also meant that there were some quite difficult characters to manage, really. And so making sure that you have somebody who can deal with that will help keep that calm atmosphere that you do want to have in an emergency centre. I think that's probably just about kind of come up to my sort of 10 minutes. So I can perhaps pause for any questions at that point if there is time, Emily, or perhaps need to kind of head on.
No, we have time if there's just any quick questions. but if not, there'll be time for questions at the end.
I've answered them all. If anyone wants to reach out and connect, sorry.
Sorry, it's Shelley here from the Volunteer Centre in Havering. I did put it in the chat, but I only addressed it to you, so apologies for that. I was just wondering what the scenario was that you were posing. You said you had this emergency scenario, but you didn't sort of say what it was: flood, fire, you know, terrorism, or whatever it was. That might be helpful to understand what it was you were doing.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a gas explosion in a tower block, so that resulted, which also had sort of wider implications on, I think it was the electricity, or certainly like the gas. No, excuse me, it was the gas supply to like the wider surrounding area. So yeah, there were also sort of, yeah, there were casualties, but we weren't dealing with casualties in the centre. So it was a sort of a kind of that kind of forms the background of what that kind of emergency centre was formed around.
Thank you.
Thanks, and thank you, Callum, for that presentation.
Alex has got a hand up as well.
Sorry, I missed that. Go, Alex.
Oh, sorry, yes. Just to say briefly, Callum, thank you very much for including the fannies in that exercise. I know they really benefited from it, and as you mentioned in your presentation, from actually working with other voluntary sector partners as well. So bringing the wider partnership together. I know, you know, it didn't include all of them, but actually it was great to be part of that. And thank you very much, and very happy to be part of it again. I think it's an annual one, so please keep in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. It certainly is an annual one, so everybody watch the space. And yeah, thanks very much, Alex. Great to have you along on the day. Thank you.